Hello, welcome to episode 2. Today we're working on a Yamaha R1 and we are going to try to diagnose and repair a charging system issue that this motorcycle has been having. Let's have some fun. Maybe we can get some wheelies out of it when we're done. Talk a little bit. So a motorcycle charges a little bit different than a car. A car has an alternator, and on all the new cars there's a voltage regulator and rectifier built into the alternator because it actually generates AC voltage and it has to be converted to DC voltage, and then it has to be brought down to 13, 14 volts, in between 13 and 15 volts, and it has to be maintained. So on an older car, if you have a generator, you'll have a regulator off to the side somewhere on the fender well. Like I have a couple of classic cars, and they originally had that, but they've been converted. So if you have a classic car, you'll see a silver box or a black box about this big, and it'll have wires going to the alternator. That's actually the voltage regulator, and the rectifier that's the rectifier as well. So on a motorcycle, what you actually have, it's called a stator. And the stator is what creates the actual voltage. It's spun by the engine. There's a magneto that spins around the stator, and that creates an electromagnetic field which generates the power. Now you can see the voltage on them by disconnecting it straight from the harness and measuring that out. You're going to have to check for your factory specifications for your specific motorcycle to make sure exactly what the 3 or sometimes 2 wires are supposed to read at. And what you do is you take a multimeter or a voltmeter and you check those with the bike running. You can check it at idle, and you can check it at about 5,000 RPM, 4,000 RPM to see what it's outputting, to make sure that it's actually putting the voltage out that it's supposed to. That's always a good place to start when you're diagnosing a motorcycle charging system, is with the stator. After the stator, you have the voltage regulator and rectifier, and it's a little box, and some bikes have them separately. They have a voltage regulator and then the rectifier after that, and then it goes off to the battery. My motorcycle actually has it in one box. The rectifier and regulator is one piece, and that does just as I told you, as in a car does. It lowers the voltage and regulates it to about, I think, 14.5 on my motorcycle, and then it rectifies it from AC current to DC current using diodes inside of it. So after that, you check that, and you can check that. Again, you're going to have to check the factory specifications, but most of the time you can just check them by using your ohms, resistance, continuity. And what you want to do is you want to check the different terminals on them to check the diodes. You really can't see if it's rectifying correctly or regulated correctly, but you can see if it's rectifying. After that, with the motorcycle running, you want to check your voltage, which is everything hooked up, and positive lead of the voltmeter on the positive terminal, and same for the negative. And you check DC voltage, and you should have about 14 volts, somewhere in that range. And if you don't, you have a charging issue. If the motorcycle has decent voltage with the bike running, but there's no voltage below, I want to say below 12 or 11 especially, with the motorcycle off, you have a battery issue. But again, it's different motorcycles, different batteries, different this, different that. But the numbers that I'm giving you are pretty fair for just about any motorcycle. So what we're going to do first is we're going to remove the stator cover on this motorcycle. On the R1, it is on the left side if you're sitting on the bike. Anytime you're talking about left and right from motorcycle or car, it's from sitting in the seat. If it's a car, it's the driver's seat. A lot of people get that confused. They'll open the hood and they'll say, oh, it's on the left side. Well, no, it's on the right side because you do it from sitting in the seat. And what it is, it's 5mm hex, and we're just going to remove that. Sorry, the footage was not there before about taking off, but we're going to go ahead, remove that cover, and we'll pick up from there, and we'll see what happens. The next thing that you want to do after removing the cover is you want to remove this bolt. Use an impact to remove this bolt. That way you do not take any kind of damage on the engine or the magneto itself. You don't want to strip the bolt. These got decent pressure on them. And I don't care what anybody says. If you are going to remove this stator, spend the money, buy the tool. It'll save you a whole lot of headache, and it might even save you a $500 magneto, because those things are so hard to get off. That tool makes it pop right off. So let's go ahead and remove that, and we'll go on to the next step. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. And look at that. See, it just slips right off, no problem. Dude, that thing's perfect. Look at it. Nah, right here. It's burnt right there. It's burnt right here. Barely, but it's burnt. All right, now that you got the magneto off, you want to take out these 3 bolts right here. They're 5mm hex. And you want to remove this bolt right here, which is 5mm hex, which is used to hold this clip, which holds the wiring out of the way of the magneto. So just pull those off, and then grab the stator and your work area. Install the new one. Put your wiring clip back. Run your wiring harness, and hook in your factory harness. This bike does not have a factory harness anymore because we got rid of it, but you probably do. Okay, so once you're putting back on your cover, you want to make sure to torque all these to 7 foot-pounds. Here you go. Do not go over 7 foot-pounds, because it is a steel bolt and an aluminum block. You will snap it off, and then you will have a lot of fun on your hands. Okay, so on this bike, we're taking the factory wiring harness off the regulator, and at a sad attempt to try to do something before, we're going to remove all this mess. And what we're going to do is replace everything with factory specified 14 gauge wire going into the stator and the factory wires coming out of it. We're going to do that by taking a pick and releasing the clip that holds the actual pin that holds the connector inside of the actual whole terminal. All right, now that we have our new wiring harness, all we have to do is plug it into the stator. And we're going to heat shrink everything up, and we're going to use a wire loom, and we're going to run it right to where the rectifier goes. And then everything will be ready to go. And then all we have to do is hook in our power wires for our charging system for our battery, and it's good to go. God, that thing sounds so good. Alright guys, so unfortunately the voltage started dropping on the bike after we were letting it run for a couple of minutes, and it turns out that the regulator was damaged as well. So what we're going to have to do is put the R1 on hold for a little bit. We'll come back in a later episode once we get the new voltage regulator rectifier, and we'll do another show of installing that, and it'll give us more time for having fun with the bike afterwards anyway. But unfortunately, really unfortunately, because I really miss riding it, we're not going to be able to get the bike running in this episode. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you got a motorcycle and you're having charging issues, hopefully this helped you out. Feel free to comment. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching Dr. Griggs.